shared by big influencers with lots of followers and lots of companies, and people kind of worked out how to game that system. But generally it was a bit slower and kind of harder to crack for those of us without a big following. But when you open TikTok, you're greeted by this For You page, and the algorithm that drives the content on there, it basically starts showing people's posts to strangers almost immediately based on their interests. So if the video you posted is about cats, then they might start showing it to a small select group of people who have an interest in cats. And if it gets good traction, gets good feedback, then the app starts rapidly showing it to a lot more people. And that means that things posted by relative unknowns could suddenly explode in popularity if they tick the right boxes. And so you get these super quick feedback loops and these seemingly random trends that just go crazy in very short periods of time. I mean, this kind of ability to set trends and power these trends is something that's even got the US government a bit worried. I'm sure you will have heard about US President Donald Trump's on-again, off-again efforts to ban TikTok. And
yes.
that's because, it's basically because some American politicians are worried that the TikTok algorithm's ability to kind of set the agenda could be manipulated to steer public opinion. And they think that's a problem because TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, is Chinese. So now they're pressuring the company to try and sell off the app.
Which is a bit interesting because, I mean, pretty much every other social media is owned by American-based companies. So they're saying we're not a problem, but China is a problem. How does TikTok feel about being asked to sell itself off from its parent company?
Well, I think TikTok's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because I think obviously the US is a big market for them, but then the Chinese government is not so keen on letting go of this crown jewel. And the Chinese government actually has the final say on whether TikTok's technology could be sold off, because there are technology export rules that say that officials have to kind of give the green light.
So, Godfred, we've just heard from Ed about how TikTok could be helping the Labubu fads to spread, but where do you want to take us next?
I'm happy to hear what Ed had to say, but I was also interested to find out why we like to follow trends in the first place.
Yeah, so why yo-yos were the thing? Why pogs?
Well, for starters, I learned we all follow trends. And so that everybody feels good about themselves, it isn't a sign of a character weakness or mental health trouble.
Okay, that's good to hear.
So, in an article in National Geographic magazine, media psychologist Pamela Rutledge says that trend following reflects our human poor need to belong to a social group and connect with others. Simply, no one wants to be an outsider. So many psychological theories argue that human connections are as important as basics like access to food and shelter. Now, human evolution has wired our brains so that we are especially alert to seeing and following social signals.
Okay, so that explains, Godfred, why this need to belong sort of peaks in your teenage years, that they are the primary consumers of pog games and yo-yos and vuvuzelas and whatever the trend is.
Exactly. And interestingly, social cognition, which is a term for how we understand and respond to other people and social situations, actually takes place in the amygdala and prefrontal cortex, which are the parts of the brain that also control functions like sight, pattern recognition, decision-making, and empathy. So this seems to indicate that our brains are good at identifying patterns and telling us how to behave in ways that follow those patterns, signaling our social status.
If there's a kind of evolutionary defense mechanism involved in sort of following a trend, are we the only animal that does it?
No, Marnie. Chimps seem to be fond of a trend too. In 2010, researchers at the Chimfunshi Wildlife Orphanage in Zambia saw a chimp called Julie place a blade of grass in her ear and leave it hanging there. Other members of the group adopted the behavior, even after Julie died, suggesting it became a cultural tradition.
Are we sure there wasn't a practical purpose to the grass and ear, like trying to scratch an itch or something like that?
Well, the researchers say that the behavior doesn't appear to have any physical or medical reason, but spreads socially from chimp to chimp.
Okay, so just like the Labubu dolls, no real need to have them, just people want them.
Exactly. But it gets more interesting, Marnie. Another unrelated group at the sanctuary has recently been observed performing the behavior, despite having no contact with the previous group. Researchers described these new findings last month in the journal Behavior. But there was an important difference. In the new group, they didn't just stick the grass in their ears. Some of them also stuck it up their behinds.
Okay, that's a trend I definitely don't need to get on board with.
All the science you need.